Welcome to season 2 of the Jeremy Mullins podcast, where we take a deep dive into different educational topics to help you optimize your life. I am Jeremy, your host, registered dietitian and strength coach. And my guest today is a fellow West Virginian. I guess I can still say fellow because at heart, I'm still from West Virginia, even though I'm right now in Florida that has snow, which kind of makes it like West Virginia.
Yeah, no doubt.
But with that being said, Mr. Dustin Holston, who is a owner of Advanced Nutrition Solutions, nutritionist, personal trainer, all in all, great individual that I've got the pleasure to know over the last, I'd say, decade
Mhm.
now. And we really didn't know each other. Even though we're from 20 miles apart in West Virginia, went to the same college, graduated from the same college in the same time frame, I think at least overlapping a couple years.
Mhm.
And then we kind of met through First Form, us doing separate things at the time, got to meet each other from that. And then our relationship has grown over the last decade. And I like to say, man, and I'll do this with my ego in check in a certain degree, but I feel like between you and I, we've done good in the state of West Virginia when
Mhm.
it comes to changing lives and helping people lose weight. Like I can't think of any other, maybe Weight Watchers over the course of time, maybe he's helped more people, in the state. But I feel like for fat loss, like our numbers have to be up there in helping individuals.
Yeah, no doubt. And that's not us being egotistical. It's just the fact that the sheer volume of folks we've helped over the years, and
Yep.
then the amount of years we've been coaching. We're a little long in the tooth, as they say in coaching, and we definitely put up quite a bit more than maybe most in the
Yes.
state.
Yeah, because I think we talked about 10 years relationship, that we've known each other, but both of us were, and if you're listening online, I'm doing the air quotes again. If you're seeing on YouTube, you can see it. But we were coaching in some format, before that, for a decade, right? So, probably 40 years of teaching and coaching, and that might be from the earlier days. Like me, I started, cutting my teeth as just a personal trainer at the YMCA in Huntington. But I was doing that as, a sophomore in college, working my way through college. And by all accounts, I am definitely a better coach trainer now than I was then, but the caring for people was still there at that time.
Yeah, in 2002, I started doing the same thing, doing some personal training and things like that at Marshall University. And so, yeah, exactly. I mean, I definitely didn't know then what I know now, but still got to push people in the right direction, but maybe not as efficiently and effectiveness as we can now. So,
Well, I got one question and then we'll dive into today's topic. So we are going to talk about GLP-1 meds today. And I just want to toss out there that one of our sponsors, Summit Rejuvenation, I talk a lot about, testosterone replacement, hormone replacement, getting your blood work done with them. But they also do have a program where they can offer the GLP-1s. And if you do that through Summit, I'll actually be your coach on the First Form app. So it's a relationship that you have with them. It's not something I talk about a lot. And to be honest, Dustin, I was holding off this topic to have you on it, since, you took really what I say, as far as my colleagues in my circle, I feel like you were the one that took the reins of it when these medications were really starting to become a hot topic and really start being used. But just for the listeners to understand, like I work with people who are on these medications. It's not like, okay, you're on this medication. We're like, all right, cool. That's, I'm not going to work with you and educate you. No, the education, the lifestyle comes just as important when you're on those medications versus when you're not. Okay. So I just kind of wanted to, put that out there. Once again, give a shout out to, Summit Rejuvenation, from being our first sponsor when we started the podcast. So before that, though, how was the trip to Charlotte ball game? I saw the photos. I know we talked on the way
oh,
down, but I didn't really get to hear the like your thoughts on it.
one, it set the NBA record for most missed three-point shots. There was 75 misses in a game.
Whew.
Yeah, yeah. However, the game went into overtime because of a buzzer beater from three, so it's kind of ironic that happened. But Charlotte got crushed, but we made the jumbotron flexing, so that's all that mattered. With my 5-year-old son's jumping on the chair flexing, and daddy's flexing behind him, and then there's the jumbotron. So
Which was you able to get like photos of it from a recording or nah?
Yeah, it's a shame, but
I know.
we had some really good pictures. They allowed us to take pictures near the courts and stuff like that, so it was a lot of fun, so.
Man, he will remember that, like, for the rest of his life. Like, I guarantee that's gonna be one of those, like, just memories and listen, teasing you a little bit, I know you guys got a lot of flexing photos with you too, right?
Oh,
But
yeah.
with that being said, I think that one's probably gonna stand out in his mind, like, forever. So
Oh,
that's
yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, it
So,
was it was a blast. He's still talking about it every day. So it was definitely a worthy investment for that trip. So
man, I love to see that. I posted something the other day, to not with that, but I love seeing fitness coaches and I say this with all respect, you know, older individuals, right? And for the record, Dustin's younger than me, so I'm definitely calling him old. But individuals taking care of themselves as they're getting into their 30s, 40s, and 50s, right? But also being good parents with that and being good people, and one of the things I've done with Katie, entering her softball season is like things are busy, man. They got like 80 games between now and basically May, and it's like, oh, yeah, I was kind of like, I didn't expect this, so I'm trying to take over some of the things that she would normally do. And like, I'm doing a load of laundry a day, just keeping up with it. You know what I mean? And I kind of made a post about that. Like, you can be in shape, right? And cool. You can show your abs on Instagram and all that. But like, if you're a shitty person, like, come on, guys, we can do better. And, I just want to say that you making that trip with him is like, that's doing better. Like, that's being a father, outside of just the providing and doing that
mhm.
stuff. So kudos for you.
Hey, thanks, man. Appreciate it.
All right, let's dive into GLP-1 meds. I guess have you just kind of start giving a overview, thinking of it as maybe someone's never heard of them, right?
Mhm.
To the people who have heard of them, and let's or just really clear up maybe some of the negative stigma that's come, with them. That way we can shine a light, like, hey, it's a tool inside the program or inside someone's wellness program. No different than supplementation, no different than, hormone replacement, in my opinion, no
Mhm.
different than gastric bypass or any of your gastric surgeries. It is a tool for some people that really, really can be beneficial. Now, with that being said, are there people out there that's using it because it is a good tool and it's a quick fix for them? 100%. But like everything else we do, we like to focus on the education component that comes along with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's probably one of the most misunderstood medical advances that we've had in years and years and years. I know there was kind of when hormone replacement therapy came out, people were kind of weary of it, like I don't really know,
Yeah.
and I think GLP-1 is also kind of it's going to take it a while for people to understand how it works and what it is before they start accepting it. But in a nutshell, GLP-1 is a peptide in our gut. When we eat, we secrete some GLP-1, which does a few things. One, it betters the body for regulating blood sugar and insulin, which was the primary benefit of GLP-1 when it first came out. But secondly, it kind of signals to the body, like, okay, you should be full now. Like you've ate enough, and it gives you that signal. The other thing, some of the other benefits we see, obviously, it's been used for diabetes management, type 2 for a decade or more now. But what we found was is in the trial data as they continued researching it, and then of course it's advantageous for the pharmaceutical company to get it approved for multiple reasons other than just diabetes, but they did learn that it did produce some weight loss. The early ones was, 5, 10 pounds total, but now we're seeing a pretty high clip, 15 to 20% of your starting body weight is kind of the number. But there's a lot of benefits of it, primarily, and there's some secondary benefits too, like it reduces inflammation in the body, which is great. We're seeing people with autoimmune have less triggers because of it. Positive influence on heart health. It's going to be approved for sleep apnea soon. So we see benefits like that. But when it comes to weight loss and diabetes management, I break it down into three core ways it helps. Number one is the blood sugar and insulin component, which is incredibly important. The people that are on these meds are either type 2 should be on these meds, are either going to be type 2 diabetics or potentially a incredibly large population of those with insulin resistance. So they get the benefit of the blood sugar and insulin regulation and optimization by taking the med. The second way it helps is it reduces gastric emptying. So just think appetite suppression. You feel fuller longer. You don't feel like you have to eat every couple hours, which again, we'll talk about how that might be a negative long term, but it allows you to feel fuller longer. So the chances are you can stay in a calorie deficit easier. Lastly, it helps with food noise, is what they call it, but more binge eating and addiction properties. I've had clients that were prescribed it off label for opioids and alcoholism, and she got clean within 30 days. And so we see it for other reasons, but the biggest one is just that binge eating. It's going to reduce that so you don't obsess with food.
And once again, guys, my medical lane is dietitian. So when I say this next, it's just from working with a lot of clients over the past 2 decades. But that addiction, that comes with sometimes alcohol, sometimes food. Even had a handful of clients with like porn addictions. Like that addiction can be with food and be the same reason. A lot of times, unfortunately, what people do is they just replace one for the other, right? Because you could have someone who stops drinking, and pick up the same addiction with food, or vice versa, stop it with food, and then pick it up with drinking, right? And
Mhm.
I think that's one of the biggest things. And I would say that a lot of the conversations I'm having with people when they're starting this journey, because like Jeremy, I don't know if I'll always stay on this. I'm kind of like, hey, I'm not against staying on at a low dose because if it is removing that thought of overeating and thinking about food all the time, that's where I've seen a really big benefit in it, with individuals,
Mhm.
right? Yes, the results that you're talking about, like, that is showing us now, decrease fat loss, better insulin control, reverse of insulin resistance. And I wonder and get your opinion on this if they'll ever approve it for just decreased triglycerides, right? Because, you might have hyperlipidemia as one of those first signs
Mhm.
before insulin resistance occurs or before type 2 diabetes is diagnosed. I'm wondering if it'll ever come out where like it'll be able to be prescribed just for that. Is there any talks in the
So the manufacturers are doing everything they can to find as many uses as possible, and one of them is over the last about 12 months, a lot of insurance companies are no longer covering Wegovy and Zepbound, which are the obesity management ones, and
yeah,
then Manjaro and Ozempic are for type 2 diabetes. It's easy to get the type 2 diabetes lines of meds because insurance companies will pay for things like that. A lot of these insurance companies are now labeling the obesity management medicine as cosmetic. And so it's like, hey, we're not going to pay for Botox, so why would we pay for weight loss medicine? And it's, I mean, a terrible school of
yeah,
thought, but just I was looking at West Virginia State Employee Insurance summary, and they said 40% of all prescriptions that they paid out on from a revenue standpoint was GLP-1 related, and that it was literally putting them in such a financial bind that like West Virginia employees, state employees can no longer get it covered unless they're type 2 diabetic because of just the sheer pricing associated with these medicines.
yeah. But that, I mean, and I'll remove, the percentage of people that are probably taking it for aesthetic reasons, right?
Mhm.
But we have to look at our population in West Virginia that's a little higher on obesity, and I would argue is higher in insulin resistance, um, total, right? And
Mhm.
that's where I think both you and I at parts of our career got labeled as low carb advocates, right? Especially me. And it wasn't that, I was like I needed everybody to be on low carb. It's just when you're working with a population that is 40, 60, 80, 100 pounds overweight and they all have insulin resistance, or most of them, and I don't want to say all, right? Like then low carb is the approach you want to do to help reverse the insulin resistance, right? So I think that number probably comes one from just the sheer volume of insulin resistance that maybe hasn't been diagnosed as type 2 diabetic, but also the fact of like it has been popular in helping just lose weight, from that aspect. So, which I think is a good segue. Or I should ask first, anything else you want to, as far as like just overview of them? Anything else you want to touch on before we kind of move to like the negatives or what is perceived as the negatives that come along with it?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I wanted to add is a few other things that we see benefits from. I don't know if it'll ever be approved for infertility and like PCOS. However, we have seen an uptick in those who have struggled with fertility in the past, actually see improvements. Most of these will have PCOS or another insulin resistance based condition that can affect menstrual cycles and ovulation and things like that. But we're seeing that the heart health benefits, the autoimmune benefits. I mean, it's pretty weird all of the mechanisms these meds can help people with. That's not just weight loss, which is not just diabetes management. So we're seeing a lot of health improvement associated with them.
Yeah, and this is just, Jeremy talking with this next one, but like if I was over PIA, what I would do is like, hey, yeah, we're going to pay for this, but you're going to have checkups along the way and you have to meet certain standards,
Hmm.
right? Because, if I can have someone lose 40, 60, 80, 100 pounds, control their, hemoglobin A1C and control all these health markers, but also make sure, and I'm throwing this one in for the conversation later on, we're going to have that they're not losing muscle tissue, which means they're going to have to do certain behaviors to make sure that's not happening,
Hmm.
then boom, yeah, I'll pay for it. Right. And I'm saying this as me as a insurance company because I know that the dividends down the road are going to pay me back of what I'm going to
Hmm.
be paying out for long-term health costs for these individuals. But I just think that I would have to set parameters that, hey, you've got to be doing X, Y, and Z, right, along the way of this journey so that does pay dividends. Because
Hmm.
unfortunately, we've seen it, right? If it's misused and some habits and behaviors are not changed, then unfortunately there could be even more health complications,
Hmm.
long term, especially when the individuals stop using, the medication. So once again, it's just Jeremy talking. I'm definitely not over an insurance company. Don't plan on being over an insurance company, but that would just be like if I was in that position, kind of my thought process. Cool. Transitioning. You hear a lot of people, and this is what crazy was crazy for me. Like in the beginning, like it was almost like people got emotional about people taking medications. Right? And I would say almost going back to what you were talking about with hormone replacement therapy 15 years ago, decade and a half a year ago. Like you would hear people, "Oh, you're on HRT, you're cheating." Well, how's it cheating when you have a 55-year-old that their testosterone was 190 and you brought them up to 800? So now they're just within range where they're supposed to be, right? That would be like saying, "Hey, Dustin, you know, do you have Lexus or Lexus? Blah 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 blah. Did you wear glasses at one time? There we go. I'll just start.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
So that would be like someone coming to us and be like, "You two are cheating, because you wear glasses and you have contacts." No, my eyesight deteriorated over time, and I'm using a tool to fix it. Right? That's no different than hormone replacement therapy. And I think it's no difference with GLP-1 meds. In some people, right? It is a great tool
Mhm.
and it's not cheating. But there was this big, I don't know, emotional response from trainers, individuals online, like that just termed it cheating. And
Mhm.
where do you think that came from? What was your thoughts on it? And like I said, giving you some kudos, you were one of the first people that I know, like in our inner circle of colleagues, that kind of like tackled it first on, learned about it, and was like, no, 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 we need to support this and be able to educate on it.
Yeah, it's, we've seen such a negative connotation associated with it from fitness trainers and weight loss coaches. And unfortunately, I think 90% of it's monetarily a concern of them. I think that, hell, my gosh, if they're on GLP-1 medicine, they're no longer having to pay me to help them. And I think that that's a lot of it. And then just the miseducation associated with it. The media is really good at overly saying things like, for instance, there is a black box warning for thyroid cancer, specifically medullary thyroid cancer in men's too. However, we still have not seen that in humans. We saw it in rats where we force fed them GLP-1. And, same thing with the diet sodas and, like the amount of volume that you would have to take in to get any negative side effects is almost impossible. And again, we're not mice, we're not rats. So we actually see a lower prevalence in cancers on those who are on this because it's helping with weight loss and, heart health and, so many different matrices that I think that we saw that, thyroid cancer. We've seen that, stomach paralysis, and we've seen, a recent study a few years ago on how you have a slightly increase of eye conditions with the medicines. Which my argument is most type 2 diabetics have issues with eye. So is it because they're not the general public? That number could be skewed pretty easily,
Yeah.
but there is a slight increase. But the chances of developing these serious conditions is incredibly low. When you look at like the return of investment for the FDA to approve medicines, if they feel like the 99 ways it affects you positive is much more better than the one way it may or may not make you negative, then they're in a position where they're going to say yes, for the majority of people, this is incredibly safe and effective. But I'm using 1% loosely. It's less than that with serious complications. But there's just this over focus on things that's probably not going to happen,
Yep.
that some fitness trainers jump on to try to say, don't take it because of this, don't
Yep.
take it because of that. And it's just a lack of understanding by most fitness coaches, but also they think they're gonna get hard monetarily, and just from a coach, guys, like, we embrace GLP-1, and about 25% of our total client base, and I don't prescribe, I help people who come to me that's on it, but, it's been incredibly profitable from a coaching perspective because a lot of people are like, "Wow, I'm finally losing weight. I've been struggling with this all my life, like, is it possible for me to lose more weight? Is it possible for me to get a lean toned physique? Is it possible for me to potentially come off one day?" And then as soon as we started educating, and we're going to talk about how to kind of fix some of the negative side effects, people were drawn to it. And they're like, wait, I can lose
Yep.
even more weight. I can actually get a lean toned physique. I can burn more fat. And I'm like, absolutely. You're already setting yourself up for win. So let's add to it.
Yep. And that's like, as a coach, you should want that. You should understand if that client is coming to you and being like, "Hey, Dustin, Jeremy, I'm consuming, my normal chicken breast, that I would normally have, but I just can't eat it all, and it really is causing some gas. What's going on here?" Be able to have the conversation like, "Hey, yes, we know protein's important. Maybe we can go to a protein shake. Maybe we have to go down all the way to an isolate a few times,
Mhm.
right?" And being able to help them in their journey, depending on where they're at with the dosage. So I think that's important. And for the coaches out there, that are listening to this, I guess, let me backtrack. Always know your audience. And this is going to come with next 3 points of my conversation. Know your audience. So my first audience with my next comments is coming to your coaches. So the coaches out there that listen to this and trainers, you want to understand and try different things. That way you can help more people. Unless you're just in a certain niche that is your thing and you're going to stay there, then I would encourage you to step out and understand different things. Understand how to help someone with a gastric bypass, surgery. Understand someone that's on GLP meds. Try a keto diet. Try to eat 6 times a day. Try these different things so that you know what is going on with it versus being emotional and being like, well, I had success this way, therefore that's what everyone should do. All right.
Mhm.
Second would be those that are not taking the medications that are judging. Okay. What I would say is don't. Okay. Don't judge in the simple fact that, like, you don't know what all is going on in this individual's life. Okay. You don't know if there is a, food issue when it comes to all they think about is food. You don't know what medical conditions are being improved. So don't judge someone that is choosing to use a tool that is helping them. And then third would be the individuals taking it. Okay. This sets us up, Dustin, for kind of our next segment, next conversation. You're not wrong for using a tool, but you still have to change your behaviors and your habits no different than anyone else. This tool is just helping on the medical side of things, maybe taking away some of these food issues when it comes to the mental side of it. That's where it's helping at. But you as individuals still have to put the work in, to do certain things to prevent some of the negative things that we are seeing when the behaviors and especially the nutrition aspect, we'll say nutrition and training aspect, are not in place. So that's kind of what I want to segment to now is some of the things that we are seeing when individuals are just taking the medication, but they're not adopting, a lifestyle of resistance training, not adopting a lifestyle of eating more protein, making sure they are getting their calories in. You touched on this, like just from a micronutrient standpoint,
Mhm.
right? What are some of the negatives we're seeing when behaviors and a plan's not followed. So I like to point that out, right? So I'm definitely not saying that the GLP-1 meds are going to cause this in every single person. What I'm saying is when they don't follow, I'll just say a game plan, right?
Mhm,
Then we can see this.
mhm. Yeah, so, the most common side effects we see in nausea, upset belly, constipation, diarrhea.
You let me down. I thought you were going to go with like, was it with Joby butt? What do you always say?
We'll get there. We'll get there. This is the baseline.
Oh,
So
okay.
we do
I'm
see
sorry.
gastro issues. That's going to be incredibly common, and it's like the majority of folks will have some sort of digestive issue associated with GLP-1. High quality greens powders, probiotics, digestive enzymes. Those are kind of what I shoot for to kind of help alleviate that. But a lot of people do have some gastro issues. Um, you know, does it affect the gallbladder? There's a chance there's a small increase in gallbladder issues associated with GLP-1. We hear about stomach paralysis all the time. I think the one about and this is a theory, so don't quote me on this, but I think the issue with stomach paralysis is if you look at the three main causes of that condition outside of GLP-1. Type 2 diabetes is number 1, and then anorexia and bulimia is number 2 and 3. And if you think about it, if you're doing incredibly low calorie diets, because you don't have an appetite, you're not really eating, then you're kind of lumping yourself into almost a starvation approach, which might cause an increase in stomach paralysis. However, we're seeing that, not very often. I've only had one client ever come to me and they had it, and I asked them, "How many calories a day were you eating?" And they were like, "I skip meals all the time. Like I was lucky to have one meal a day." And so, those are kind of the ones that you see on the news, like, "Oh, worry about this." It's very, very low prevalence. I isolate GLP-1 side effects that concern me into three different things. One is rapid muscle loss. And so, if we look at what we know so far, roughly 50 to 60% is fat loss, and 40 to 50% is muscle loss. So, in theory, if you're losing 50% fat, 50% muscle, your body fat percentage really isn't changing, even though you're losing weight. And that long-term muscle atrophy can cause issues with frailty and other conditions as you age because you're literally withering away because of the rapid muscle loss. So when you're losing that much muscle, you're going to see implications with that. We also see associated with muscle loss, we do see a lot of plateauing. And if you look at the trial data, typically if you plateau for 3 or more weeks on GLP-1, you're actually done with the weight loss side of it, unless you make changes to diet and exercise. And normally that's also tied to muscle loss. If muscle is one of the biggest drivers of our metabolism. So if you lose 100 pounds and 50 of it's muscle, that's going to be a huge drop in your metabolic rate each day. So that's kind of linked to the muscle loss. The second one that concerned me is bone loss. You'll see a theme here, Jeremy, on how to fix these things. So bone loss is something that we're seeing, osteoarthritis, osteoporosis like things. And again, this isn't necessarily the GLP-1's fault for 1 and 2. It's because you have to combine some other things that you can do to offset those issues. But we do see bone loss. The third one, which is brand new, and this is catching a lot of news, is we're actually seeing heart atrophy. There was a study recently in mice and human cells that showed heart shrinkage because well for those who use GLP-1. The interesting thing is, and I don't know if we'll talk about how to fix it, but all three of these are completely related with one specific deficiency that's causing it. You're going to see hair loss. This also is going to be linked to what's kind of causing the bone and the muscle loss. But that's basically, and then of course the dreaded Ozempic butt and Ozempic face. And so thanks for reminding me on that one. So you hear about it all the time. Any type of starvation based diet is going to give you skin related issues. If you're chronically under eating by far less than what a 2 or 3 year old needs from a day to day perspective, you're not going to retain much muscle and you're going to lose a lot of things that support your skin. So we have a lot of muscle in our jaws. You start losing a lot of muscle, gravity takes over. All right? And then you got a little bit of a hangy face. You have a lot of muscle in your booty. You start losing that rapidly. The skin doesn't really have anything to stick to, so it gets a little droopy. So whether you're doing incredibly starvation-based diets or GLP-1 potentially and not doing the right things, this is what I tell people. You can't tone on GLP-1 alone. If you want to get a lean tone physique on GLP-1, the medicine itself, there's no study that says you're going to love your physique at the end of your GLP-1 journey, right? It's a great tool for weight loss, but from a aesthetic standpoint, if you're not doing the right things, then muscle loss, hair loss, bone loss, heart atrophy, and the droopiness of the skin is all related, and one of the things that I see daily that people are concerned about.
And I don't want to put words in your mouth, so fix me if I'm wrong on this, but all those complications that you're saying can and will happen if you undereat also,
Yes.
right? It's just very hard to undereat for a very long time because of our hunger cues,
Mhm.
right? I mean, our bodies are built to survive, right? The human body is a great, wonderful thing. And I always say this: you want to see miracles of human bodies, like study pregnancy and all the changes and how things have to happen for us to even have babies. I say have babies, females have babies, like guys, yeah, we don't have babies, okay? But like I've always said that like the female body is an amazing thing, right? So is the male body in the sense that we're talking about these hunger cues. So all these issues, like you're saying, is really an under eating issue, under
Mhm.
fueling issue, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Specifically with protein.
Yeah, and then the
Every
medications just really help the appetite aspect when we're saying like, okay, GLP-1s, and that's always I want to make sure people understand that the GLP-1 is not automatically causing these issues. And that was a lot of the thought in the beginning was GLP causes muscle loss. No, 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 not directly. What's causing the muscle loss is the under eating that
Mhm.
is coming with that, right? So yeah, let's talk about these three things that you mentioned. How do we fix it? And I don't want you to go necessarily really in detail because I think we're 9:40 ish now on time. So I think we come back and do a specific of, hey, if you're going to take GLP-1 meds, here is the game plan,
Mhm.
right? And then you and I both can, because our game plan is going to be the same. It might be vary by a different supplement here and there, or minutes of X amount of walking or whatever. It may vary a little bit, but our game plan is going to be the same. I know
Mhm.
that, right?
Mhm.
But let's talk about if someone is like, oh man, I didn't know this. What are some things people can do to kind of offset what you just talked about from a 50-foot view?
Yeah, yeah, I break it down a few different ways, but number one, do not starve yourself is number one. And what's funny is when I do TikTok lives and stuff, and I say that, people get irritated at me. But I try to define what starving means, and I always say like a 2 or 3 year old needs 800 calories. And if you're eating 800 calories or less, which happens on these medicines for some people, especially if the doctor's a pusher to continue increasing doses, beyond what they probably need. More medicine typically just reduces appetite more. If you're already losing, then why do you need the highest dose when you can do a lower dose and go up faster or go up later? But, getting yourself to a point where you can eat enough to provide what your body needs. I mean, we use food timers, which is a generic term that you have your food ready when it's time to eat. Do you have to finish it? No. But you need to keep those hunger cues coming. Eat something when it's time to eat something. Have it prepared because you're not going to want to cook something if you're not hungry. That helps with that. Number two is protein by far. I mean, when we look at the heart atrophy, the hair, skin, hair issues, the muscle loss, the bone loss, it's 100% linked to protein deficiencies. And that's actually what they found in the heart atrophy study was people just aren't eating enough protein. Many people, think muscle and protein. I think that's the only thing they're concerned with. And then you can literally break, everything you can touch and feel on your body is made out of protein. So hair, skin, nails, bones, ligaments, cartilage, even your thyroid hormone needs an amino acid from protein. Organ tissue repair, cellular repair, nerve endings, like your body has a need for protein daily, and because of appetite suppression, chances are you're not even getting enough protein to fulfill those core, processes in the body. That alone retaining muscle. And so it is something, whether you have to do shakes or, whatever it might be, like hitting that protein goal is critical. But as I know with Jeremy, it's the same game plan for bariatrics. It's like spread it out, drink, easily digestible foods to get you that protein goal easier. It's the same kind of game plan there. Just hit your protein in no matter how you can hit your protein in.
And if you're new to your wellness journey, hey, most people undereat when we say optimal protein. Most people are under eating that without taking medication. So if we're just
Mhm.
looking at the general public, you are probably under eating protein. And if we do have some excess body fat we have to lose, you're overeating the carbs and the fats. Like that is
Yeah.
just the reality. So just take that in consideration, right? If you have just started this medication or you're taking this medication, you were probably not consuming enough protein to begin with, right? And then here we are, introducing medication that's decreasing your appetite, making it even harder to get in. And the last, component of this, and this is where, like I said, we'll deep dive into this game plan. Remember, protein needs go up in reduced caloric diets. So if you're in a maintenance plan or you're trying to gain some muscle tissue in a surplus, you actually don't need as much protein as you do in a caloric deficit. So just pointing out some things that come along with the protein conversation.
Yeah, we definitely emphasize protein in our day-to-day lives. So yeah, and that's something that people do struggle with because protein's the most filling macronutrient, so you're already slower on appetite. So eating protein reduces appetite further. So it's kind of one of those things that you have to have the intent to hit a protein goal if you're going to hit a protein goal. You just say, "Hey, it's time to eat." You don't know how much protein you're actually going to get in. So it's really important either working with a coach that specializes in it or having the ability to understand how do I get to 100 grams of protein? How do I get to 140 grams of protein? So we tell our clients, well, my general recommendation for the average person is like if I'm doing a TikTok lecture or whatever it is, you know, there's no reason to eat less than 80 grams of protein. But if you're working out, I don't even like my clients to work out unless they're over 100 grams of protein. I think there's some diminishing returns when you're under eating protein and you're working out, which is causing an exponential need for even more protein. However, we do want to shoot for, I call it, zero point 0.8 to 1.2 grams of protein toward, of current body weight, or excuse me, goal body weight. That's kind of how I calculate it. There's different ways to do it. Now, nutrition coaches, you do got to really, I don't want to say baby them, but you do have to, whether it's bariatric or if it's GLP-1, you got to understand what their struggles is going to be, and appetite's going to be that. And starting off, I'm much more emphasize on protein intake than I am even calorie intake, because once they start working out, becoming more active, their body will, have increase their metabolic rate, which will actually increase hunger cues. And so starting off, it's like eat as much calories as you possibly can. Just make sure you hit your protein goal. Now, obviously, there's an asterisk. I don't mean obviously going off the rails, but I focus on protein at the very beginning to get them set up, and then continue to try to increase their calories to a level that's actually needed for an adult.
Yeah, and you say that knowing that, with the medications, the appetite is gonna be pushed down, right?
Mhm.
And then increasing the protein is gonna push down the appetite even more. So it's gonna be hard for them to overeat the calories. And if they do, you're gonna catch it within the first week. Like, "Hey, Jeremy, you're eating 5,000 calories, to hit your 200 grams of protein. I need you to back some of that down," right? You're gonna catch that, and that's the wonderful thing about, the coaching aspect and the accountability part, along this journey. But unfortunately, a lot of doctors' offices, whether it be, let's say doctors' offices, medical clinics, or prescribers of this medication, don't give the client any support or education. They educate it just on the medication and that's it, right? And I think that's a big takeaway, for maybe someone's new that's listening to this and is thinking about the medications or just started. Find you someone, like Dustin, that's going to help you along this journey and be able to educate you not only during, the increase in the medications as you're going up, the decrease in the medications as you're going down, but also the long-term approach to living a healthy, quality life, right? Because the thing that scares me, and it's a big push I've been lately, maybe because I'm just getting older, look at all this and all this stuff that we're talking about, like bone loss and muscle loss and strength loss and this is all that we're trying to build up in clients, right? Like I am, I am trying to get people to think of what life do you want to live 65 to 85 years old?
Mhm.
And I want to build as much strength. I want to build as much cardiovascular fitness. I want to build as much bone density. I want to build as much muscle tissue in individuals into their late 60s as possible so
Mhm.
that then they can just stay relatively active, doing the things that they enjoy doing and live that quality of life. And the negatives here that we're talking about that you're seeing, like that's not going to help the quality of life, but they can be averted by making these changes that you're talking about inside the plan. So I got one thing I want to touch on, and then like I said, I want to bring you back on to do like basically, hey, here is the game plan. If we're on GLP-1 meds, here's the things you want to take in consideration, and we can kind of dive deep into that. Yes, you want that zero 0.8 to 1.2 grams of protein at target body weight you're talking about. What does that look like? What have you done with
Mhm.
people? Is that 6 times a day? How do you break it up if someone is, having some bloating or just having like zero hunger? We can get in the weeds with that. But let's talk about metabolic rate a little bit. And this is something I wasn't too concerned for a while, but over the last decade, I'm really watching some of our people that, maybe you're doing the first form challenge or come to us for quick, like, hey, I got to cruise in 10 weeks, and they're really being aggressive. What does that rebound look like? Right. And I understand there's behaviors that go into it, but metabolic rate also plays a role. And have you seen any of the data or the studies that looked at some of the biggest losers, how they still had like a negative impact to the metabolism 6, 7, 8 years later?
Yeah, it's actually a study that are you talking about the Biggest Loser study, or are you just saying My Biggest Losers?
No, the Biggest Loser study specifically.
Yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, I love that study. And we think about things that slow our metabolic rate. Menopause, we see a decrease, normally from muscle loss and things like that as they age, but we see that's detrimental a little bit. Hypothyroidism is detrimental a little bit. So we start, PCOS can reduce basal metabolic rate. So we see health conditions that can lower basal metabolic rates. But the Biggest Loser study from I think it was like 6, 7, 8 years ago, they looked at folks who were at the beginning of their show. They tested their metabolic rate and starting weight and all that good stuff. They then tested it again at the end of the show, and they found out they had roughly a 600-calorie decrease in metabolic rate just over the course of the show. I tell people all the time they should have got sued for the stuff they were doing on that.
Yeah.
Like, just absolutely crazy that the legal team at NPC or whoever was like, "Hey, no big deal. Continue starving and overtraining these folks daily."
Yeah, people loving it. His show ratings up. These guys are happy in the moment. The
Yeah.
participants were happy, right? And I'd argue like they were happy when they got the dopamine fix on a weekly basis when they weighed in,
Yeah.
but I bet the other 7 days or 6 days rather were tough mentally, if
Mhm.
you think about it.
Yeah, and then, they followed up with them a number of years later, and what was crazy, is the fact that most gained their weight back.
Yeah.
However, to me, what the craziest thing was is their metabolic rate didn't change for that 6 years difference, and
That's
so it was still 600 calories suppressed, and we normally think like, "Oh, if we gain weight, we're gonna gain some muscle back." Fat does burn a couple calories per day, per pound or whatever it is. And you would automatically assume, well, these people weren't very healthy at the beginning of their journey before they were on the show, but they were still burning 2,500 calories a day on average.
yeah.
You would think that they're going back to their original state, that their metabolic rate would go back up to what it was pre-show, but it actually showed a 600-calorie decrease in metabolic rate. And so we actually work with a client who was on the show. She finished second one season, and that's kind of what she experienced too. Once you take away the accountability of both the monetary value and then also having people push you 24/7 on these shows, you take that away, right? Appetite comes back. Your metabolic rate's less now than it was at the start. You start eating the way you used to, you're actually even greater calorie surplus than what you were if you were eating that many
Oof.
calories before the show. And so rapid weight regain is insane, but we see that in GLP-1. So what they actually did to test what's the effects if you stop GLP-1 was is they gave two groups of people a GLP-1 meds. One of them got it for 16 to 18 months. However, the second group only took it for like 6 months, and then they gave them a placebo. And what did they find? And they found that average weight regain was 70% of weight loss. That's average. So if you lose 100 coming off of it without a game plan, the average person would gain back 70. Now, this is where I get mad at providers because when you don't give them the education of expected weight loss, we know at your start weight, we can estimate how much average weight loss is. I think that's a shame because a lot of people are like, I'm not losing fast enough. And it's like, actually, you're doing quite well. It's not
Man,
as
and that's
much.
expectations. We see that in everyone. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
I got a few handful of ladies right now. I'm just using ladies because the weight's a little bit lower. You know, they're 140, 150 pounds and they're trying to lose some weight. They've lost 4 pounds this month, but they're upset. And they're like, I'm like, you know, a
Yeah.
pound of fat loss a week at 150 pounds is flipping amazing.
Yeah.
You know, it's so a lot of times, like you said, it's perspective, and it needs to be taught in the beginning. Like, hey, this is what the expectations, are from that standpoint. But that's yeah, so crazy. 600 calorie decrease in average of resting metabolic rates in The Biggest Loser. So you think about being very aggressive in exercise and very aggressive in calorie reduction. And then 6, 7 years later, I forget the exact years later, only probably roughly a 10% gain in metabolism back, if that. So being 500 calories less resting metabolic rate from doing that years later, right? So, think about this, guys, in what we teach from behavior standpoint. It's not about short term. Yes, we got people who push the envelope, but pushing the envelope should still come with certain things. And I want to, and this may be the third episode I want to do with you. I'm doing some things. I'm trying to keep calories as high as possible, even when I'm pushing fat loss, like fiber content and protein, extra protein intake, just to have calories relatively higher, but keeping the fuel sources, the carbs and the fats. I get it. Fiber is a carb for people out there, but fiber doesn't necessarily digest all the way. It's only 2 calories. So by supplementing some fiber, getting more veggies in can make the calories higher, but fat loss remains high. Um, but we'll get into that at different. I'm going down a soapbox that I'm on right now, with the resting metabolic rate. But gosh, I think it's so important people hear that, people know that.
Yeah, it's wild. I've actually gotten debates before with doctors, PAs, NPs on TikToks. I summarized that study one time, and I literally had so many healthcare professionals like bash me for it. And I'm like, "Oh, no, diets don't impact metabolic rate long term," and I'm like, "Yes, yes, they do."
Dude,
And if you do it safely, you know what I mean, then that wouldn't happen, so if I'm following and I'm eating a lot of protein, staying in a calorie deficit, but not going extreme, yeah, you're gonna have a little bit of drop in metabolism anyway, but if you did go off the rails a little bit, it probably would find equilibrium again. But when you add in dangerous based or starvation based diets to this equation, the lasting effects on metabolic rate are we don't know how long it lasts. I mean, it could be indefinite. I would say if it's 6 years after a show and it hasn't improved, then it's not naturally going to improve.
no, unless I mean, like I said, you'd have to take the steps of like a once again reverse dieting up,
Mhm.
really focus on building the muscle tissue, like that type of stuff to maybe increase it. But I'm leaning towards that too. With is it a long term damage, right? Like and I think of that for myself. Like I've had some resting metabolic rates done, and like they're a little lower, and I'm like, man, is that from like my early years of being overweight and then losing weight just by cutting calories? Right? Like, even though I got good muscle tissue now, decently low body fat for a 45-year-old or 44, man, I'm already looking ahead to the next, next birthday there. But that's interesting. Man, I appreciate it. We could continue on and on, but I know most people are probably done with their walk or done with their drive to work right now. That's when most, I think, the people who download they do it on their daily walk. But yeah, guys, we're gonna bring Dustin back on, a couple more times. One will be specifically to talk about like, okay, hey, we are doing GLP-1 medication. We're gonna go down. What is that game plan? But we're also gonna come on, because him and I both, have a lot of people who've lost 100 pounds in a year, and we could kind of take a step by step approach of what do we try to do with that. What does that look like over the course of a year when we have someone that loses 100 or needs to lose 100 pounds, because we're not trying to do it in 3 months. Someone's got 100 pounds to lose, like we're looking ahead, to like, if just theoretically if they're starting in January, we're kind of planning it out for them really up until December the next year, knowing that it's going to take some time so that we can do it correctly and so that the behaviors that we educate them on, are going to help them maintain that for life. So, and then I would like to touch on the metabolic rate just as a separate one, what I'm
Mhm.
saying, and dive into a little bit more of what we're seeing with that. So,
Well, I'm honored by jumping on, so I definitely appreciate it. One last thought, my last rant. People are going to hear that 70% weight regain and they're going to try to use it against me or others that support GLP-1. And of course, my goal as an educator and coach is to prevent that from ever happening. And we've actually helped a lot of people come off. However, if you're okay with PEDs, which by the way, once you stop taking PEDs, guess what? You gain your weight back, you lose the muscle again, but you're against GLP-1 for the same reason, just be mindful of that you're agreeing with one that causes weight loss and muscle gain when you take it, but it goes away when you stop, but you're complaining about GLP-1 because if you quit, you gain your weight back. So it's a little, there's some hypocrisy there, but I just want people to open their eyes that if you're okay with one, you should probably be okay with the other, and actually we can talk about health improvement and deterioration with PEDs and stuff like that. But,
yeah.
the big thing is just be mindful and start thinking outside the box. Like, hey, if people need it, I'm going to help them. I'm never going to discriminate against somebody, even, like I don't do keto anymore, but I'm not going to turn down a keto client when I can help them, so like help, don't sell, help, don't criticize, that's the big thing.
I love it. Be a good person, as we
Yeah.
talked about earlier, right? You can be the best coach out there. You can be the most in shape person. Have the biggest social media following, whatever. But if you're a shitty person, like, come on, be
Yeah.
better, right? And don't have a stigma with this. Whether you're taking it or whether you're not taking the medication. Support others. Do it. It is a tool that can help. And yes, we do want to change the behaviors that we all should be doing so that we do live at optimal, healthy, as long a life as we can and a quality life. So
Mhm.
appreciate you, brother. I hope you have a great rest of your week and a wonderful weekend. And for the listeners, we'll talk to you guys soon.